We are very, very happy to have, again, Steve Robertson and Sun Metals here to present today. Sun Metals is exploring and advancing the Stardust Project in British Columbia, a gold copper porphyry project in BC, in a very favorable mining district for those types of projects. With us again is CEO Steve Robertson, and Steve is got an extensive background, most recently with Imperial Metals or Imperial Mines, I should say, which many of you are familiar with from their work with us at Fortynine North over the years, a mid-tier player. That was a great company to work with for over the years. Steve was instrumental in exploration, government relations, and permitting for all the 5 projects with Imperial, and specifically the Red Chris mine, which has now been acquired as majority ownership by Newcrest, and I believe Newcrest out of Australia. Steve joined Sun Metals in 2017, and here we are in 2020 for their presentation, and looking forward to a great presentation. So without further ado, the great Steve Robertson.
Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate the introduction. I'll just round out my resume a little bit for you before I jump into the presentation and share my screen. So I am an exploration geologist by background. I spent most of my career in the exploration, and as Matt had mentioned, the biggest milestone in my 24-year career at Imperial Metals was to design and implement the deep drilling at Red Chris, which took that from being another little medium grade deposit in British Columbia to proving that it was actually a 16 billion pound of copper, 24 million ounces of gold monster. And we weren't done exploring it when we went to build the mine, and now Newcrest has got 8 drills turning on the property and is picking up where we left off. So that was a great grounding for me to get into the role as CEO of Sun Metals, where we're truly in the exploration game. And I'm looking forward to telling you about our Stardust project today. So with that, I'll share my screen. And hopefully you all see a sunflower with a bumblebee on it. So I will have forward-looking.
You're good to go. I said we do. You're good to go. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, good. Thanks. I will have forward-looking statements in the presentation, so I encourage you to go to our website. You can see this in detail if you need to. So Sun Metals is driven by 2 factors: quality and opportunity. And the quality is pretty obvious: quality location, quality project, and a quality team. And we think that we check all the boxes in those 3 factors. But really the magic to all this is the opportunity. And the group that's behind us, Oxygen Capital, has been doing this for a long time, and they've had a lot of success by going into data-rich environments and putting a different lens on the information that had been gathered by those that went before them, and being able to find opportunity, being able to find value where others had missed it. And that's exactly the case here with Stardust. We went into a project where the discovery goes back to the Second World War, 1944. And there'd been a lot of work done over the years. None of it had been put into a computer. So the first time that was done was in 2017. We took all of the 70 plus years of history and computerized it, and validated that work, and actually came up with some sophisticated 3D modeling, and that resulted in some great targets and truly a world-class discovery late in 2018. So look forward to telling you that story as we go through. There's our discovery hole late in 2018, 5% copper equivalent over 100-meter core length. I think that was probably the most significant copper gold discovery globally in that calendar year. In 2019, we went in and started to drill on the zone, and actually got 17 intercepts into it that season. And we proved it to have at least a 375-meter plunge length, and still open for expansion and further exploration in several areas. So really off to a good start with this new zone that we'd found. Just one slide on the group that's behind us, though, Oxygen Capital. It all started in 2001 with Frontier Gold. Frontier was a startup. This founding CEO was Dr. Mark O'Day. One of the founding directors was Donald McGuinness. And a couple years after they formed the company, their CFO joined them, Sean Tetzlaff. After they took Frontier from zero to a $2.3 billion takeover by Newmont in 2011. That was based on, by the way, their Long Canyon asset, which today is one of Newmont's top performing mines. So if you do that once, you could be good, you could be lucky. But if you do it as many times as the partners at Oxygen Capital have, you know these guys are pretty good at the business of being public. Yeah, you can see that there's 4 companies currently in the stable: Liberty Gold, Pure Gold, Discovery Metals, and Sun Metals. Liberty is exploring in the western U.S. sedimentary basin in Idaho and Utah. Pure Gold is redeveloping the Madsen mine in the Red Lake district. They're going to be pouring gold there later this year. They had a news release this morning and some absolutely spectacular bonanza grade gold intercepts in their exploration drilling there. Discovery Metals is exploring for silver down in Mexico, and Sun Metals, the company you'll hear about today, we're exploring for copper gold in northern British Columbia. Just a final note here, these 3 companies over here have a market cap of between about $500 million and $1 billion with Pure Gold. Sun Metals has got a current market cap of less than $20 million. So we're the newest member of the group. We've only been public for 2 years, and we're still growing, but I think we're off to a great start. And I know we've got some catching up to do, but we're game to do it. So from this point forward, we'll just talk about Sun Metals and the Stardust Project. You can see the property location map on the right-hand side of the screen. Stardust is located in north central British Columbia. We're not out on the west coast in the Golden Triangle. We have the advantages of being in the interior. We've got low rolling topography. We've got interior climatic conditions. So rather than the 40 or 50 feet of snow in the wintertime that you hear about in some of the areas over to the west, we get 4 or 5 feet of snow. Last year, we worked there right until December 21st. Absolutely no problem working in wintertime conditions up there. You can see that there's good geologic endowment in the area as well. The Mount Milligan mine, that's British Columbia, is, well, one of the newest mines in BC and also one of the biggest, is 120 kilometers to the southeast. Chemes mine is 200 kilometers to the north. And the Bell and Grand Isle former producers are just 80 kilometers to the southwest of us. So we're in a great area of geologic endowment here. Infrastructure is fantastic. High tension power line to the east. We got a low tension power line to the west. Rail 38 kilometers to the west. You can actually drive a Cadillac right onto the property from Prince George. You need a 4x4 once you get onto the property, but excellent road access right from Prince George. Prince George is a city of 100,000 people. So as they say in Prince George, if you can't get it in PG, you can't get it anywhere. So it's a great spot. You can rebuild the engine to a 400-ton ore haul truck right in Prince George. You don't have to send it out any further than that. So I guess the last thing to talk about on this slide is First Nation relationships. When I was at Imperial Metals, one of the areas of responsibility that I had was First Nation relations. I did 11 deals with different First Nations, including the Taltan on the Red Chris project, which I think is still held up as the gold standard of community company relationship agreements. Well, we're off to a good start with TACLA at Stardust. We're in the core of their traditional territory. The chief is an ex-logger. He's a businessman, so he understands the benefits that these types of projects can bring to his community. And they've been highly involved in our exploration work to date. They've done all of our earthworks, lumber supply, and we've got a number of the community members that are working on the exploration team. So we're off to a good start. It's also notable that TACLA is a stakeholder in the company, so we have a good alignment of interests with them to date. So the 30,000-foot view of the exploration here, we went in 2018, made a tremendous discovery. 2019, drilled on the zone and found that it had some legs to it. And what's continuing to motivate us to move forward with the exploration is the fact that we see the evidence that this is a long-lived multi-phase system. And those are the ones that get big and rich. Well, we know we've got rich. We have excellent grades from one end of the deposit to the other. And I think that if we keep exploring, we're going to show that it's got some substantial size to it as well. Now, just some examples of why people look for these types of deposits. Arizona Mining was taken over by South 32 in 2018 for $1.8 billion based on their Taylor deposit down in southern Arizona. Now, I know some of the geos over at South 32 and the work that they're doing down there, they haven't published it because South 32 is such a giant company that they don't need to release all their exploration results, but they are finding the deposit down there to be absolutely world-class, and they are falling in love with the carbonate replacement deposit story. So there's more to follow up on that story later in the presentation. JDS Silver sold the Silvertip project to Coeur in 2017 for $250 million US. I managed this project for 5 years when I was with Imperial, and it's really the only other significant CRD deposit in British Columbia, so good linkage there. Santa Eulalia is the grandpappy of these types of deposits. It's a huge mine that's down in Mexico. It's been running for 300 years continuously and still going strong today. And then, of course, Mag Silver is a company that was founded on these types of deposits. It's currently got a market cap of close to $2 billion. So the reason why these are so valuable is because of the grades. Very high grade deposits compared to others. And it, really grade is king. It allows companies like Sun Metals, junior companies, to be able to advance the project significantly without huge capital outlay. So they're really attractive to both junior and major mining companies in the sector. So just to focus on the grade, we did go into the historically known mineralization. We updated the 43-101 estimate of the mineralization there, and you can see it here on this chart. The tonnage is close to 3 million tons, and the grade is about 2.85% copper equivalent. So we have excellent grades, not enough tonnage. And but just taking a look at it from a grade perspective, I've plotted the indicated and inferred grades compared to some of the best undeveloped massive sulfides globally, and you can see we stand shoulder to shoulder with top tier deposits in that area. So if we can get more tons, we're going to have a very good project on our hands. Now, this is an overview of the mineralization that's identified on the property to date. Again, the discovery on this property dates back to 1944. Bonanza grade silver gold mineralization was found in the area shown in yellow here. And over the years, the prospectors worked their way up into the orangey brown zinc silver part of the system. And in 1999, Dr. Peter McGaw found the gold copper part of the system that's shown in deep red. Now, Peter McGaw is a name you might be familiar with. He's one of the founders of Mag Silver. Peter worked with me as a consultant on the Silvertip project back in the mid 1990s, and it was after we worked there together that he had made the copper gold discovery on this property, Stardust. And he's generally considered to be one of the world's leading authorities in carbonate replacement deposits, and continues to be on our technical advisory committee. One note that you should make here is that we do own 100% of the project. We started out with an option agreement, and when we made the discovery, we decided to take over the company that we had optioned it from. And by doing so, we got 100% ownership with no underlying royalties or other encumbrances. It's also a very large property, just about 10,000 hectares. So plenty of room, not only for exploration potential, but also for any conceivable mine development that would be done on this property. We've got lots of room for that. There's a photograph of myself and Dr. McGaw on the property just after hole 421 was drilled late in 2018. One of the most memorable things about that trip was that this is hole 421 that's actually on the table behind us. And when we were logging that core, we noticed that there were at least 13 different episodes of cross-cutting and overprinting relationships, each one of them being representing a pulse of metal-laden fluids that was coming through and forming this system. And Peter's always talked about how these long-lived multi-phase systems are the ones that get big and rich. Well, we know we've got rich. There's excellent grades from one end of the system to the other. And if we keep exploring, we're fairly confident that we're going to see that it's big as well. There's a plan view of the 421 zone. You can see the drill holes that we've got into it to date. The ones that are shown in bold here are early releases from our 2020 program. We've just started to report results from this year's exploration. And we'll take a look at the long section to look at that in more detail. Here are all of the drill holes that have intercepted this 421 zone to date. One of the most important ones here is hole 457. And that was in the first batch of results that we reported from 2020. It is really the stitch that ties together the 421 zone and the overlying Canyon Creek zone. So this is truly a feeder zone leading up into that overlying mineralization. And every time we establish one of the connections between the 421 zone and the overlying Canyon Creek zone, it just builds more tonnage. It adds more pounds of copper and ounces of gold. So we're having a lot of fun tying these things together and figuring out the intricacies of the very complex 3D mineralization that we've got in the system. Should be noted, though, that now that we've tied together the 421 zone and the overlying Canyon Creek zone, we actually have a 900-meter plunge length corridor of high-grade copper-gold mineralization stretching all the way from the surface discovery up here by Dr. McGaw in 1999 through to hole 455 that is the lowest one that we've explored the 421 zone with to date. And it's still open in this direction down on the north end, but right now it's a little bit too deep to continue to do that from surface. Those drill holes are going to be 900 or 1,000 meters long. And right now we've still got additional work that we can do in the south end of the 421 zone. So that's where a lot of our work in the 2020 field season was focused. So this is the summary of the 2020 exploration program. We had a $3.8 million budget. We started with 3 drills in the first week of July. All 3 drills were productively working throughout the three-month period until the end of September. We shut down right at the end of September, and all of our crews were off the property by about October 8th or October 10th, something like that. It was a very productive season for us, and that's one of the advantages that we have being road-based with the excellent infrastructure that we've got. Some of my peers who are working over in the Golden Triangle, they have helicopter access, a reliance on helicopter to get out onto the project. And because it was such a rainy, claggy summer in northern BC this year, they had very low productivity rates because there was a lot of no-fly days. Didn't matter to our guys. We just kept on going every day, drive out to the rig and put the rain jacket on and keep working. As a matter of fact, we only had, out of the 3 drills, we only had 1.5 shifts that we missed. And that was because there was a blown engine. And it took those guys a shift and a half to pull out the engine, get the new one installed, and get the rig performing again. So excellent productivity. And I'll just note as well that obviously in this year of COVID, we had an unusual camp situation. We appointed a COVID manager very early in the program, and he went in and set up the protocols for how our crew was going to work while they were on site, and was very, very strict about making sure that everybody complied with those rules and protocols that we set up. Even when I went up on site, I was, had a waggy finger at me for, forgetting to put on my mask in a certain area or forgetting to wash my hands before I went into the dining room, that sort of thing. So it really worked out well for us, though, because we didn't have any cases of COVID. We were able to protect our workers and the community, and at the same time maintain our productivity on the project with no loss of work. So that was great. So we were able to conduct 12,000 meters of drilling in 17 drill holes, and that resulted in over 3,100 samples that we've sent into the lab. The turnaround in the lab results has been quite slow, but we do have 2 sets of results out already. We've reported on 6 of those 17 holes. So we've got another 11 to go, and we expect to report on those over the following, the rest of the calendar year.
Hey, Steve, a quick question for you from the audience as well. In looking at McGaw's influence on the project, can you kind of just illustrate or elaborate on why did he not take an original swing at Stardust in 99 or back then, and vis-a-vis, kind of moving forward with you 20 years later or 18 years later? What was the reasoning for that, or if there was any?
Yeah. Well, there's a good story behind that, actually, as there quite often is in the mining industry. Peter actually did take a good swing at it, and he ran the exploration program on this project for 2 years. The fellow that was running the company at that time was a plumbing warehouse salesman out of Coquitlam, who was a self-made millionaire and had lots of money, but his true passion was the promotion of the junior mining sector. And he was a very domineering individual, very difficult to work with. And Peter left the project, as many of the geologists did, by walking out with his box full of data and never coming back. And actually, when I phoned Peter up and let him know that I was going to be joining this company to work on the project, I asked him if he'd be on the board, and he said, "No, I don't do boards." And I said, "Well, would you be on our technical advisory committee?" And he said, "Yeah, I will, but can you pay my outstanding invoice from 2001 that never got paid?" So I paid it, and he actually showed up with a box full of data that the company had never received, because and I think a lot of relationships that George had ended in that way. And that's part of the value that we found in this project. There was a little bit of a chaotic management style back in that day that resulted in some missed opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That's a great story.
Yeah. So this is probably one of the most important slides in the deck. You can see the two projects here, our Stardust project that I've been talking about here. We also have a joint venture with Teck, 40 kilometers to the north. This is a high-grade porphyry project, and there's some good opportunities. Teck is the current operator of that project. But one of the things to note here, remember South 32, the guys that took out Arizona Mining for $1.8 billion? They loved the carbonate replacement deposit systems. They set up an office in Vancouver 2 years ago with a dual mandate. Number one, corporately, they wanted to find more companies like Arizona Mining, and then they were going to do some greenfields generative type work. And this is their first piece of generative work since they set up that office, was to stake 30,000 hectares immediately adjacent to the Stardust project. And they just did this late in the summer, so we're very happy to have them as next door neighbors, and we're quite interested to see what kind of a program they're going to conduct in 2021. There's our current capital structure, 167 million shares outstanding. Insiders and board own about 14% of that. Teck owns 8%. Teck came in and did a financing with us immediately after we made the discovery hole in 2018. So that's how they got their ownership position. 78% of the stock is in float. Now, keep in mind, we've only been public for 2 years. That's largely retail, the current float. But as we move forward, we continue to get a stronger and stronger institutional presence in the company. And we've got a few good institutional names that are now shareholders. I won't stop here, but these are some great shots for any geologists that are reviewing this. They're just full of evidence of cross-cutting relationships and overprinting of earlier phases of mineralization. Again, evidence of that multi-phase long-lived system that we think we have at Stardust. And there's the people behind the company. The board is the three principals of Mark O'Day, Donald McGuinness, and Sean Tetzlaff are the three principals of Oxygen Capital. Donald is our chairman. A couple of experienced geologists on the board, Glenn Garrett and Rick Bales. Both of those gentlemen have a number of discoveries to their name. And Bill Morton is Glenn's partner. They were running the company that we optioned the property from originally, and they continue to be involved. Glenn on the board, Bill on the technical advisory committee. And then from management, myself, our CFO, Lauren, and our project manager, Tyler. And not pictured here is Ian Neal. He's our VP Exploration, a celebrated geologist who won the 2003 Bill Dennis Award for his role in the discovery of a 50 million ton massive sulfide. He was leading a team that made a wonderful discovery back in the early 2000s. And he's a great guy to have leading our technical team today.
Another quick question from the audience. This is from Matt. Did Sun Metals consider staking the ground recently grabbed by South 32? If so, why did you guys not pull the trigger?
Look, we've got a lot of exploration targets on our property. This is actually, I mean, it looks small. It's only a third of the size of the ground that South 32 grabbed, but it's 10,000 hectares. We got a big chunk of ground to explore there and a lot of opportunities. We didn't feel we needed to go out and grab that ground. I hope that I don't eat those words. I'll feel certainly bad if South 32 comes up with a tremendous discovery there. But I think that we're pretty comfortable in our ground position as having the best ground in the district.
So it was not a financial decision by you guys. It was just kind of more, let's stay focused on what we're doing and move forward. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot on our plate just with the property that we've got. That's for sure.
Got it. Okay. And then talk to us specifically about the actual acquisition of Stardust. How did that go down, and who was the player involved, and what were the terms, and how did you guys pull that off?
Yeah, well, so this goes back to the mid 2017. So Mark and Donald had a relationship with Rick Bales. Rick was a director of one of the companies that got taken over, an Oxygen Group company called True Gold. And a couple of years after that company got taken over, Mark and Donald went out for lunch with Rick, and they were talking about old times. And at the end of the conversation, they said to Rick, look, what's the best unknown, under the radar project that you know of that people aren't paying attention to? And without missing a beat, he said, well, Lust Dust is what he said. We've changed the name of the project, but it used to be called Lust Dust. And Mark and Donald shook their head. They say, well, we've never heard of Lust Dust before. What are you talking about? And so they went over to Bill and Glenn's office and started to review the data and really got excited. They liked what they saw and were quite taken by the project. And so they formed a company and did an option agreement with Bill and Glenn. They recruited me from Imperial Metals to come and run the company. I joined them in November of 2017. And over the winter, we did a financing and took the company public in May. And, in that first program that we conducted in our first full season out on Stardust, we were able to make discovery of the 421 zone. So the rest is, as they say, history. Really started with, a bright geologist knowing a good property when he saw one.
Got it. Question from Steve in the audience. How many employees does Sun currently have? And is it primarily copper vis-a-vis gold?
Sorry, what was the last part of the question, Matt?
Is it primarily a copper play?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, in terms of the number of employees, we only have 4 full-time employees, but the company's much bigger than that, because part of the Oxygen platform, and this is really one of the key elements to the success of Oxygen Group companies, is the shared resources that we have. So for instance, I've got a world-class structural geologist that sits in the office next to mine. I have access to him whenever I want. I don't have to pay all of his salary though, because he gets shared amongst the 4 companies, and he's got lots to keep him busy. So sometimes you have to wait a little bit, but it's the same thing with some of the office staff, secretaries and assistants, as well as technical people. We share a number of those resources, so they're not classified as full-time employees. And then up on the project this year, we had 35 people in camp at any given time. So a lot of those people are seasonal contractors that come on and work for us in the field season only. But in terms of full-time employees, it's 4 people. In terms of, is this a copper play? It's earlier this year when gold had taken off and copper price was still languishing. This was actually a gold project. So it is truly polymetallic. And we certainly had more value in gold. Now that the price of copper is caught up, it's once again a copper project. But I think that it's fair to say that it is truly polymetallic and significant values in both copper and gold. About 90% of the gross metal value is in those two commodities, and then the remainder is mostly silver with a little bit of zinc value in this particular zone. Keep in mind that there hasn't been any resource calculation done on the silver zinc part of the system or these epithermal veins out in the periphery where the high-grade gold silver is. So there's additional resources on the property in those areas, but we're continuing to focus our efforts on the copper gold zone.
That's great. So another question from the audience from Mark. Steve, based on your total shares out, do you foresee a reverse split coming down the road at some point?
It's not something that we're planning to do. I think that we're in a reasonable position right now, but I'm not really enamored with where our share price is right now. I certainly like to get it up a little bit higher before we did any further financing work to try to keep the number of shares relatively reasonable. But I think that 167 million shares is not outrageous in today's context. So I'm not too worried about doing a rollback or anything like that anytime soon.
And then we've got another one from Dave in our audience. Can you assess the risk of what he calls a take under? I would assume he's meaning take over at this low market cap.
Yeah, that's something that we're aware of. One of the things that we do when we sign confidentiality agreements with folks is we make sure that there's a standstill agreement in there, because we don't want to have people or companies being predatory and being able to take advantage of our low market cap. And so it's something that we're constantly paying attention to. There's only one solution to that, and that's get the stock price up a little bit. But for companies that are aware, it's kind of interesting just thinking back 2 years in 2018 when the discovery was made. After we announced the discovery, our stock price still continued to languish a little bit, and it went up a little bit, and then it came back down again. And it wasn't until Teck actually paid a 25% premium in the financing when they took up the back end of a charity flow-through financing. We were trading at about 25 cents, and we did that financing. The front end of that financing was at 41.3 cents. And then the market woke up and said, oh, geez, what are we missing here? So sometimes the guys that have more technical insight do have an advantage in being able to realize how much value there is in a project like Stardust. And so that's something that we are constantly considering. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it though.
And then a quick question for you, just based on my experience directly, with your history at Imperial and in Red Chris and what have you, how did this directly influence your move on Stardust? And was it the project itself, or was it the group? Was it the human capital, or was it the actual project? And what I mean by that is looking at, Mark O'Day and Sean and those guys, great success. I've known Mark since 2002. I worked with him at Frontier for years. Was there a weighted difference for you on the actual project or oxygen? Was there a bigger influence there?
Basically, there was three things that influenced my decision to leave. A good career. I have a lot of good friends at Imperial Metals. Worked there for 24 years, and it really was a tough decision to leave. But being the CEO of a company like Sun Metals was something that I've always wanted to do. Being able to join guys like Mark, Donald, and Sean to be able to do it just seemed, the opportunity is never going to get any better than that. So there's tick in checkbox number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I was getting further and further away from exploration in my job at Imperial. I became more, my calendar was getting more full of political events and hobnobbing with politicians and things like that than it was with getting out and seeing the rocks in the field. And I really didn't want to end my career that way. I truly love exploration and wanted to get back closer to the rocks. Now, being the CEO isn't exactly boot leather on the ground type of job, but at the same time, I still do get to be highly involved in the exploration planning and that sort of thing. And then the third factor is the project. Peter McGaw is, certainly in my mind, he's the world's leading authority in these types of deposits. He found the copper gold zone. Peter and I have remained friends since we met each other in the mid 1990s. And, he has spoken to me a number of times about the quality of this project, how much he likes it, how much he believes in the system, and really thinks that this is something that where there's a lot of value that could be added. And so if it was good enough for Peter to speak that highly of it, I thought, well, there's got to be a tremendous opportunity. So those three things sort of aligned and helped me make the decision to jump over into Sun Metals and start on a new journey.
Sounds very compelling. At the end of the day, I mean, you're surrounding yourself with human capital, both on the oxygen capital side, but as well with Peter, that is some of the best in the business for sure. So that's a good way to do it, and I think that's a great answer. So one other question on financing. Your last financing was when, and give us more detail on that.
Yeah, we did a financing that we didn't really plan on doing, but when COVID hit, we had almost $1 million Canadian that was owed to us by the Canada Revenue Agency. So that was they call it a METC, Mineral Exploration Tax Credit refund from our 2018 drill program. The check was in the mail, and then all of a sudden everybody went dark, including in the federal government. And so not having any vision on where that money was at or when we were going to get it, in May we decided that we were going to do a small financing. We set out to raise $1 million to replace that check that was lost in the mail, and we ended up upsizing that to $1.5 million. We did that at 8 cents, which was unfortunate, but something that we just had to.
Who did that deal, Steve?
Pardon me?
Who did that deal?
It was non-brokered.
It was non-brokered. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so with that, your cash currently is where you guys at?
We've currently got $1 million working capital. Our burn rate is relatively low right now, and so that'll last us through 2021. Of course we want to get back out and explore, so we're going to be in a position to raise money before we start to see the treasury getting too low. So we're in a comfortable position right now.
Okay, very good, very good. Just looking at this, and then just with Mark O'Day, what's his influence? Is he just an oversight at this point with Oxygen? Does he have a direct role in decision making within the company, or no?
Well, he certainly is, somebody that I turn to on a regular basis for sage advice, not only on markets and financial matters, but certainly on geological matters. I mean, right. Mark is Dr. Mark O'Day. He has his PhD, and, he's been a strong technical influence on all the companies that he's involved in, as well, he's an absolute master in terms of financial markets. So I lean on Mark as much as I can in terms of getting the benefit of his experience, having done as many things as he has, even though he's 6 years younger than me.
Yeah, that's always a tough one to chew on. But let's see, we've got another question from the audience, from Mark in the audience. But forgive me if I missed it, Steve, but I'm assuming you can operate all year long in your location.
That's correct. Yeah, that's one of the advantages of being where we are. Not only we have all of those infrastructure advantages, but we've got the interior climatic conditions as well. So we only get 4 or 5 feet of snow in the wintertime. Last year, we worked right up until December 21st, and you know, that we were well into wintertime conditions by the time we pulled out. The tough time to work actually up there is in the transition from summer to winter, and then from winter to summer, when we go through breakup. But once we're into full-on winter conditions, there's absolutely no problem working up there. It's about 20% more expensive than working in the summer, because you got to do the snow clearing and run heaters on the water lines and things like that. But really very easy to work in this area year-round.
And pardon my ignorance on this. Geographically, you said the project is near Mount Milligan, correct?
Yeah, 120 kilometers to the northwest of Mount Milligan.
Okay, how far is that from projects like Galore Creek and Donlin and places like that? I'm just curious.
My guess, not having actually measured it, I would say that sort of Galore Creek and Red Chris would probably be about 500 kilometers to the northwest of us.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Well, I think that is it from us in the audience, and great questions for Steve. Excellent presentation.